Hey, hope you're doing well. The reason I'm making this video today is really to break down the sales process in a simplified way. So obviously I have another video talking about the specific sales script, some of the specific questions and the strategies that I would use to jump, whenever I'm jumping onto these Zoom calls, talking with potential prospects and trying to close them and push them for a one-call close. But what I realized is, especially if you're a beginner and you haven't necessarily taken a bunch of sales calls, gotten a ton of sales training, and you're just not like that proficient at sales, a lot of those things could actually confuse you, right? Because there's actually a lot of people online. I'm sure you could go on YouTube and watch like sales training videos, and you see a lot of different stuff from people like Grant Cardone, Jeremy Miner, people like that. And they always tell you to use very specific strategies. And the biggest risk that I found that I realized is if you try to emulate those strategies without understanding the fundamentals of sales, what will happen is you will come off as extremely salesy, and you're actually gonna do more harm to your sales ability than just keeping it simple and sticking to the fundamentals, right? So that's kind of what I realized. Again, I've taken over hundreds of sales calls for my own agency. I've closed 50 plus clients. So I kind of know this works, right? And in the beginning, I wasn't even that good at sales, right? Now, obviously, I don't think I was completely bad, but I obviously wasn't that great. And by sticking to the fundamentals, I slowly got better. And then as time went on, I started experimenting with different things, different strategies, different techniques. And that's kind of what I do now, right? And that's how I built that other video talking about the sales strategy. But I wanted to use this video to keep it simple for you, especially if you're a beginner, you haven't really taken that many sales calls, and you don't really understand that how it works, and you're not super confident in your ability. So jumping right into it, the very first thing that we want to do on any sales call is the first step, which is the introduction plus the agenda. This is kind of the step of the sales conversation where you jump on initially and you're introducing yourself, you're giving them the ability to introduce themselves. And what you want to do here is you just want to keep it simple, right? You don't want to ramble on about the weather or some random stuff. What I typically say is, hey man, I saw that we have 30 minutes on the calendar. If it's good with you, let's jump right into it. And the first thing I ask is, where are you calling in from today, right? So depending on where they're calling in from, I always say, nice, I'm calling in from Toronto, Canada. And then I leave it at that. That's the only thing that I talk about in the introduction for themselves and yourselves. I set the agenda for the call. So I say something along the lines of, hey John, I know we put 30 minutes on the calendar today. We probably wouldn't use all of that time, but if it's good with you, I want to ask a couple questions about your business, see what that kind of looks like, and go from there. How does that sound? And obviously they're gonna say yes. And then you're basically, the purpose of this is you're establishing the agenda for the call. You're letting them know that, hey, we're gonna ask you some questions to learn about your business. If that's good with you, we'll jump right into it. That's kind of the purpose behind setting the agenda and asking for permission to ask questions for them. It's very important you do this step, because if you don't do this step, then it can come off a little bit pushy if you just jump onto the call and right off the bat, you're just asking him questions about his business. How does this work? What does this look like? What do you guys do? Right? So it's very important that you guys start off the call by establishing the agenda and asking for permission to ask him some questions. After you get that permission to ask questions, the very first set of questions should always be focused around what I call the current business state. So you have to understand what they're currently doing right now in their business, what they're doing right now, what does that look like, what does their sales process looks like, what did they sell, that type of thing. Here are 4 questions that I always ask in any sales call, and obviously the specific words that I use could change, right? The different sales strategies that you learn as you progress in your sales career will obviously change. The way you ask these questions will be different, but these are kind of the core questions that you always want to be asking, because this will give you the information that you need to set up your pitch and to further push the sales conversation. So obviously the most important question is you have to understand what product or service are they selling. What happens for a lot of people is, once they book in a call, you can kind of look them up on your Calendly, right? If they use their business email, you can highlight the domain and go onto the business website and see what they sell. But even after you do research, you still want to ask this question, because what happens is oftentimes the answer that they give from you asking this question might be a little bit different from what they actually say on the website. So it's very important that you always ask, what is the product or service that you sell? What are your price points, right? Like, how much do you sell these products and services for? What industries and niches do you work with? So you're obviously selling a product, you're selling a service, you understand the price points, but who do you work with specifically? Who do you sell these services to? This is very important because especially if you're selling lead generation services, these are the people that you will be reaching out to eventually down the line. So you have to really understand this and understand that not every single industry or niche you could get results for. If they're reaching out to a B2C market, then that's not really a market that you could get good results for if you're selling cold emails, if you're selling lead generation as a service. So it's very important that you're asking these questions to really understand, not just for you to understand their business, but so that you could qualify these people you're talking to and make sure that the clients that you are working with are the best possible clients that you could get good results for. You also want to ask and find out what are the typical end results that the product and services are. So for example, if you're on the phone with some guy who does SEO services, landing page services, and they work with coaches and consultants, you need to find out what is their desired end result for those coaches and consultants, right? So obviously you're building landing pages, you're doing website design, but what is the end result that that person is selling? You have to understand these things, and if you don't understand even what I'm talking about right now, make sure you go and watch some of the other videos, especially about the offer, because by asking these questions, you're able to determine where they are in their business, who they work with, and if the offer you can craft can actually work and get them really good results using cold emails. Again, I can't highlight this point enough. Not every single person that jumps onto a call with you, even if they want to throw cash at you, you won't be able to get results for every single one of them. So you have to keep that in mind. And these questions is so that you can qualify them from your own end for your own peace of mind and your own sake. After you figure out their current business, you want to understand the next set of questions, which is the current sales process. So obviously, if you're selling another different service other than lead gen, this process might be a little bit different. But if you are selling cold emails and if you are selling lead generation as a service, it's very important to understand, number one, what they're doing in their business, which is the previous set of questions. But now, what are they currently doing to book meetings? What are they currently doing to get sales? What are they currently doing to get paid customers for their own product or service? So these are some of the questions that I like to ask. The first one is obviously, what are you currently doing right now to get new customers and clients? How do you currently book meetings for your own business? So what channels are you using? And what are the results of your current process? Do you like the results? Do you not like the results? Or if you're relying on word of mouth and referrals, do you like that process? How many meetings are you getting? You want to make sure you're asking these form of questions so that you can understand and dig a little bit deeper and understand if they actually have a problem that you can solve. Obviously, if you're selling lead generation as a service, the best type of answers that you could possibly hear is someone saying, oh, we have not tried cold emails right now. We want to do cold emails. Right now, we're getting all our customers from referrals and word of mouth, and we are not liking the results because it's very inconsistent. That's probably one of the best answers you can get, but obviously not every single person will give you an answer like that. So it's obviously a spectrum of things, but just to give you an example, that's probably the best answer that you want to hear. So after you ask them questions about their current sales process, you have a good understanding of how they're getting customers, how they're currently getting meetings. You understand if they like it, what they're currently doing, or they don't like it. The next aspect is you have to understand what they think about cold emails, especially if you're selling cold emails or lead generation as a service. You cannot, it will be really hard for you to sell cold emails to someone who doesn't believe in cold emails. So if you jump onto a call and you identify that they have a problem booking meetings and you ask them, have they considered cold emails for their business? And they hit you with, no, we have not considered cold emails. We think cold emails is spamming. We don't think it will work. Then just disqualify them and hop off the call and save yourself some time. I made mistakes in the past where I asked this question, people said, no, I've never considered cold emails, and I continued selling my products and service. And what actually happens is you waste your own time because you spend the next 10 to 20 minutes pitching your product, and at the end, they will come back to saying, nope, we don't believe cold emails works. We don't believe cold emails is good because we think it's spamming. So if you ask the question, have you considered cold emails for your business? And they say no, then disqualify them and hop off the call and go on to the next one. That's what I will tell you to do. Make sure you understand the thoughts about cold emails. So anything other than no, we don't think cold emails will work, they will probably say, yep, we've looked into cold emails. Maybe we've tried it in the past. We haven't looked into it, but we're considering it. All of those are good answers, and you want to understand what they mean. Why haven't you looked into it? You tried it in the past. It sounds like you didn't get good results. Why is that? What do you guys do? ask those type of questions and make sure if they've tried it before, you understand what actually happened. Because if they tried it before and they're not doing it right now, then most likely they just never got good results. So ask them questions to understand why they think they didn't get good results. Was it the lead list? Was it the copy? Was it the volume? What were those reasons why they didn't necessarily get the results they were looking for? After you understand that, the next set of questions is their future business state. So obviously now we understand what their current business is, so what they sell. We understand what they're currently doing to get sales calls, to get new customers, to book in meetings. But how about the future business state, right? So what are the goals with cold outreach? We realize that they believe in cold emails as a process. They know that it works. They just don't have the vehicle and they don't know how to make it work for their business, but they believe that it works. But in the scenario that it does work, what are the goals with cold outreach? What are the goals with cold emails? What does success look like for them? Is that booking 5 calls? Is that booking 10 calls? Is that booking 20 calls? What does that tangibly look like? You need to identify these things because the answers they give in with these questions, it will set you up for your pitch. Because obviously when you're pitching, you're not using a one size fits all kind of pitch. What you have to do is you have to adapt your pitch. If they say over here, success looks like booking 10 calls a month, then in your actual pitch, you'd be talking about how you could get them 10 calls a month. If they say success looks like 5 qualified calls a month, then in your pitch, you'd be talking about how you get them 5 qualified calls a month. So you obviously need to ask these questions so that you can adapt your pitch. So you have to understand their goals and what their future desired business state is. So moving on, after that is obviously the actual pitch. So this is the section where there should really be only 20 to 25% of your actual sales call. The biggest mistake you can do is spend 40 minutes just pitching your service, basically you just talking on and on and on about how great your product and how great your service is. So you don't want to make that cardinal mistake of sales. Make sure this section is no longer than 5 to 10 minutes of the actual sales call. If you do the process correctly in the other videos I shared with you about leveraging video sales letters, leveraging your middle of funnel to nurture your prospects, then really the people who jump onto these calls, they should be relatively qualified, and at minimum, they should understand what you do at a high level. Maybe they don't understand the specific processes, the specific steps, but they understand what you do, how you do it, and what the typical results are. So you don't want to spend too much time actually talking about your services. You just want to run through it at a high level. But basically, the main things you want to cover is what are the typical end results for your clients. If you don't have any case studies, what's the typical end result of the system, right? Take the answers that you got from the previous step of the desired goals and plug it into your pitch. Again, if they say success looks like 5 qualified calls a month, make sure you say the typical end result of this cold email system that we implement for clients is 5 qualified calls a month. Make sure you're taking the answers and applying it inside your pitch, because if you do not, then you're going to be really bad at sales. Your close rate is going to be really low because you're not very personalized, right? And people could hear through that. They could see through it. Make sure you're using this section to walk through the process that you go into to achieve this results. Make sure you are walking that fine line between detail and saying at a high level. You need to understand your audience. So for example, if you're pitching people who are very technical, then you might have to go into a lot of detail into each of the steps. If you're pitching people that are a little bit more high level, then you don't necessarily need to go into as much detail. And if you do this step incorrectly, what will happen is people will get really bored and they will zone out of your conversation. So make sure when you're doing these calls on Zoom, you always look at their facial expressions. If they look like they're visually bored, then make sure you wrap it up and you move on. Because if they're bored, then you've lost the sale basically, because they're just not even paying attention anymore. But make sure you're always paying attention to their visual looks, right? Make sure they're paying attention. You could call them out if it looks like they're not, but if it looks like they're not paying attention, make sure you wrap up this section. This is the part of the sales process that people get the most confused. You could leverage either a PowerPoint, so some form of visual. I personally don't use a PowerPoint anymore. I used to, but what I found is that whenever I leverage PowerPoints, I tend to talk a little bit too much and people get bored and zone out. So I personally don't even use a PowerPoint anymore. I just talk in high level topics and high level talking points. So that's kind of what I do right now. But this is pretty much what you will be doing in your sales process. Again, the purpose of this video is this is not for you if you've had tons of sales calls, if you understand how sales works, this video is most beneficial for you. If you're just starting out, you haven't taken that many sales calls, you're probably not that good at sales, you're really nervous before every sales call, this video is for you, right? Because if you go into the sales call with different strategies and tactics in place inside your mind, what will happen is you'll be going in with a narrative that you're trying to push, and people can kind of sense that. That's called sales resistance. So this video is really good because I wanted to talk about the high level questions, some of the main things you wanted to ask, some of the main talking points to get your prospects to open up. And once you get really good at this process, then obviously you want to get into more the sales strategies, some objection handling techniques, stuff like that. Watch the other video I have about that. But this is what I wanted to talk about in this video. Hope you found it valuable. And when you jump onto these sales calls, make sure you ask these questions and get the answers that you're looking for. But thank you. Bye-bye.